Dr. Richard Carrier, and you are watching Atheist Edge.
Krishna, circa 3200 BCE, Hindu deity. Krishna means dark in color. Christ means anointed in dark olive oil. Both Krishna and Jesus had to flee to a faraway land in order to escape the wrath of the local king. Jesus is the son of the god Yahweh. Krishna is the avatar of the god Vishnu. Both walked the earth in human form. Both offer salvation through themselves only.
David Daleiden created a heavily edited video that deceptively represented a stillborn fetus as an aborted baby. He did not have permission from the mother to use the footage, and he admitted that the footage had nothing to do with Planned Parenthood. 2016 Republican presidential hopeful Carly Fiorina perpetrated the deception to a nationwide audience. Robert L. Deere fell for the fraud and killed 3 people and wounded 9 at a Planned Parenthood clinic.
The story of Ramses II is one of the foundations of the alleged scientific miracles of the Quran. The Quran is purported to be the first source that the pharaoh ever existed. However, Ramses II was one of the longest ruling kings of Egypt, and many statues of him are still in existence today. The Quran specifically mentions Ramses II. False. It mentions Pharaoh and nothing more. It provides no dates or historical information which would reveal which pharaoh it is describing. Ramses II's body was found and buried at the Red Sea. False. He is buried at the necropolis in the Valley of the Kings. Ramses II was naturally preserved by Allah. False. He was mummified by Egyptians, with his organs removed, stuffed with herbs and flowers, and wrapped in bandages. Ramses II has the best preserved body. False. His father's body, among others, is much better preserved. Ramses II dies of drowning. False. It has been conclusively proven that he died of a dental infection and hardening of the arteries.
Many of the Mormon customs, symbology, terminology, and temple garments are suspiciously similar to the Freemasons. Additionally, the secret handshakes used by Freemasons are the very same ones learned by Latter-day Saints to one day demonstrate to the sentinel angels in order to be allowed access to the highest levels of heaven. These facts, combined with the fact that Joseph Smith was not only the founder of the LDS Church, but also a Freemason himself, is embarrassing evidence that Smith's divine revelation was a completely rectum-derived fabrication.
Bueno, todo esto confirma lo que es una secta. Esto es una viva secta, lo que los Freemason y lo que son los mormones, todos ellos son una secta. Y básicamente esto lo que confirma que esta persona realmente quería ser adorada por encima de lo que es la religión. Si tú ves el centro de toda esta idea de los masones y de los mormones, todo esto es querer ser el centro de atracción, querer ser adorados como los mitas. Ustedes saben los mitas en Puerto Rico, los mitas también, que Aarón y la otra, todas estas personas son un culto que quieren ser adorados, que quieren ser el centro de atracción. No hay ninguna diferencia entre ellos dos, pero claramente al él querer enfocarse y presentarse y proyectarse como que era un mormón, básicamente lo que te evidencia es que una secta, esta secta o la otra secta, ¿qué más da? Siguen siendo una secta, y de un paso a la otra lo que hay es un pie. Así que realmente esto nos confirma y nos deja ver que realmente ambas son una secta, la cual se idolatra al centro y al personaje principal.
If you could stop someone from raping an innocent person, would you? If you answered yes, then you are more moral than your own God. Interesting. children must begin praying at the age of 7. Once they reach 10 years of age, they are to be beaten if they refuse to pray. Wow. So basically, just from these two little mini paragraphs that I read, it literally says, if you stop someone from being raped, you're more moral than God, which in a sense means you're better than God. But then in the next line, you literally say that, children are to continue praying, are to continue, are supposed to pray starting at the age of 7, and they're beaten if they don't pray. So couldn't you just look at it as, a 7-year-old saying like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to rape anyone. And if I see someone being raped, I'm going to, do something about it. Oh, great. That makes you more moral than God. Almost in the sense of, hey, you're probably better at this point. It looks like you're better than God. Then why are you praying? First of all, why are you praying to God if you're better than God? And then second of all, why are you getting beaten for it? Now you're beating religion into another person. You're beating religion to another person, which was a huge issue here in the United States and other places. When you beat something into someone, either A, they're going to absorb it and they're going to live a limited life in fear because they want to make sure that they abide by these guidelines that are given to them, or they're going to completely reject it and just say, fuck you, I'm not doing this shit anymore. I'm done. And I've been on that spectrum. God, I remember it's like in the beginning, I started off as a Baptist, and my family, beat it into us about going to church every Sunday and even trying to do Bible study and things of that nature. Great. But after a while, it was just beaten into me so well that when I finally had a choice to get out of it, I got out of it. And I took my break. My father became a huge religious person, and then he started shoving down my throat. You need to get into religion. You need to get into religion. You need to get into religion. Being a gay guy, you're a sin. It's like, you're a sin, and there's this spirit that's preventing you from living the life of God, which was being straight. Practically might as well just be white, have a standard family and kids. Yes, I do want to have kids, kids in a family, but not in the same way that you want it, or the way someone else wants it. Which kind of reminds me why I went into my business of yesteryear. So releasing the expectations of others so that you can live your life based on the things that you want. And this right here is literally an example of, hey, I'm forcing you to do religion because this is what it says. When in actuality, it should be, here's religion. Here are the benefits of it. If this is the route that you want to go, great. If it's not, it's not. That was the thing. We have a power of choice. We can choose to do this if we want to, or we don't have to. And either way it goes, it's going to be fine. No one's going to die. But in the end, it's our choice. If you force it upon someone else, they're going to learn, they're going to regret. They're going to hate you. They're going to hate everything about it until they learn to love it on their own. Like I said, was a Baptist, finally broke that off. I was done. I finally went back into looking into Catholicism, in which I started that like 5 years ago or something. And that turned into, it was an interesting experience because did I believe in everything that they said? No, but my philosophy was, do I believe in a higher power? Absolutely. His name is God or the universe, or there's many other names that we call this higher being. Everybody has a name, doesn't matter what religion. But through when I made the choice to, hey, I actually want to learn about religion and all that, and there was no pressure of forcing me to do it, then it became a lot easier, and I was a lot more willing to want to do it.
The Book of Mormon, erroneously, claims the following were already present in North America before European exploration: donkeys, goats, cows, sheep, pigs, iron, brass, steel tools and weapons, metal coins, and chariots.
The sperm cell is all that is required for human reproduction. The female egg or ovum is not required. Quran 86:6. The Code of Hammurabi, an organized list of Babylonian laws, was written over 300 years before the time of Moses. As we shall see, the similarities between the Mosaic laws of the Old Testament and the Code of Hammurabi are enough to conclude that Moses plagiarized the Babylonian text. That would mean the divine revelation at Mount Sinai didn't happen, and that would mean the divine inspiration of all biblical scripture is suspect. Examples include, in both laws, the penalty for adultery and kidnapping is death. Both speak of an eye for an eye. Leviticus 21:23-25, Statute 196. Both pronounce that you must pay a fine if you injure someone in a fight. Exodus 21:18-19, Statute 206. What are the odds that both sets of laws would contain punishment for such a specific crime as smiting your parents? Exodus 21:15, Statute 195.
This is the first thought. His image, she became the womb of everything. For it is she who is prior to them all. The Mother, Father, the first man, the Holy Spirit, the thrice male, the thrice powerful, the thrice named androgynous one, and the eternal aeon among the invisible ones, and the first to come forth. Judas Iscariot said, I know who you are and where you have come from. You are from the immortal realm of Babylon. Jesus replied, Step away from the others, and I shall tell you the mysteries of the kingdom. The Holy Book of the Great Invincible describes Babylon as a divine emanation called Mother. The three stales of Seth proclaims her as the first ear, male virginal Babylon, the first glory of the invincible Father, she who is called perfect.
All plants are safe to eat. All right, so this, what Jim is referring to here, comes from the book of Genesis, chapter 1, right at the end, where God has created man and woman in his own image, or their own image. And I'll just read the tail end of this chapter here. And God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And God said, Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given you every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. So this is the end of the chapter 1 creation account. This is also known as the priestly creation account, because it likely comes from the priestly source, and is a bit of a takeoff on the Babylonian creation account, the Enuma Elish, in the sense that you've got these multiple sort of levels or iterations of creation. Creation doesn't happen just sort of all at once. It's this step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 sort of a thing, and that we know was in the Babylonian
mythology that probably influenced the Israelite priests when they were in exile and may have kicked off this whole enterprise of putting together the Pentateuch. Now, what's interesting there is the idea that the food that has been provided for men and women is plants and not meat. And that probably also is indicative of the fact that it comes from the priestly account. So one of the things that is recorded in, like the book of Daniel, the Jews, after they were sent into exile, one of the big problems that they faced was, well, the food that we consume has to conform to this way of being prepared, and we also have to avoid certain types of meats. So this has been historically verified, archaeologically verified, that there was some change in the dietary habits of the ancient Jews, and to wit, they cut out pork. So at a certain point in their history, you can see pig bones in their trash, basically, and then it just disappears. So there's something did happen within the culture that caused them to avoid pigs, and so that may have been added into or collected into their early myths. And the people who were probably the most sensitive to that was probably the priests, or whoever was in charge of maintaining the national cult. And so when they were in Babylon, the priests who had been used to eating the food that was provided by sacrifices in the temple or temples, suddenly they didn't have that access to them anymore. And so like, well, we're only allowed to eat this ritually sacrificed meat. That's how we made our living, and now we don't have the temple. We can't do these sacrifices anymore. So what meat do we eat? Do we eat the meat that the Babylonians have? That's sacrificed to their gods. You know, we can't partake of that. And so the solution that they had was to eat just vegetables, so they became vegetarian. And that kind of set them apart within Babylonian culture. And anyway, I don't know if that is directly the reason why the ending of the first chapter here seems to imply that vegetarianism is God's original plan, but it does kind of end up that way for whatever reason. Now, the point that Jim points out is that God said to the man and the woman, I've given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit, you shall have them for food. So does God mean that everything is safe to eat, including grass and weeds and other things, thorny bushes? Is everything? Well, possibly, right? So it's, it seems to be that there's this idea of like the perfect, sort of origin, the golden age, before things sort of go bad. Now, the Garden of Eden itself is a separate mythological account, but the priests that wrote chapter 1 surely were aware of the Garden of Eden. So they may have been thinking about the Garden of Eden when they were writing this. It might have had in mind, it's not made explicit, but it's probably the idea that they had. And so in the second chapter of Genesis, we do have what's probably an earlier account, an earlier layer of mythology from the Yahwist source, talking about the Garden of Eden. And the creation account there is a little bit different. And what it says there is Yahweh God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. So instead of man and woman just sort of popping into existence in chapter 1, you've got God actually forming man out of clay, right? So that's how the first man gets his name, Adam, which means basically red clay man. And out of the ground Yahweh God made to spring up every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life was in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So in the Garden of Eden, the only plants that existed were plants that you could eat. So this idea that all the plants that exist are good to eat was probably just meant all the plants that you have access to, which are the plants that are in the Garden of Eden. So everything here is good to eat, including the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which was good to eat, as Eve discovered. It was just that it conferred this knowledge, and so that's why it was a problem. So it, and I don't think they ever meant it to say, well, you can eat grass and you can eat, whatever, poisonous plants. You can eat nightshade, and that'll be safe to eat. Now there is this later tradition that is in the sort of appendix of the Gospel of Mark, where if you're a Christian, then you should be able to eat toxic things and not have anything bad happen to you. That does exist there in Christianity, but this is much, much earlier, and so this is not relevant for that. One interesting thing, though, you can kind of see this progression. As I said already, it appears that in Genesis 1, it's implied that God intended for Adam and Eve to be vegetarian, and it's only really at the end of the Yahwehist creation account, which ends with them being kicked out of the Garden of Eden. Yahweh God presumably kills some animals and takes their skins and uses them to make clothes for Adam and Eve, so that when they leave the Garden of Eden, they're no longer naked, right? So it doesn't explicitly say that Yahweh kills animals and takes their skins, but he makes clothes out of animal skins. So unless he just materialized leather out of nothing, which he could have done, who knows? He probably did kill some animals. And then the next thing we see in the next chapter, they've got two sons. They've got Cain, they've got Abel. Cain is a farmer. He's raising vegetables. And Abel is a sheep herder. So, it's not explicit that sheep herding is meat eating, but you're a step closer to that. I mean, I suppose you could be a sheep herder and just want their wool. Your leather, maybe, I don't know. But there's no explicit meat eating early in Genesis, actually, if you look for it, until you get to Genesis 8 with Noah. So you've got the Noah story, the flood, and after the flood is over, Noah builds an altar to Yahweh, and he takes one of every clean animal and one of every clean bird, and he offers burnt offerings. So he basically kills these animals and burns them on this altar to Yahweh. And Yahweh smells the smell of the cooking meat, and it's a pleasing aroma. And he says, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth, etc., etc., etc. So Yahweh likes the smell of meat, right? And so then you see meat eating, kind of become a thing, and it becomes an important thing later on with Isaac and Esau. And the reason that Esau is the favorite of Isaac is because Esau likes to hunt, which Isaac likes, and Isaac likes to eat the meat of the animals that Esau kills. So you do eventually end up with a lot of, pro meat eating stuff. It takes a while to get there, and it does seem to be an idea of the primordial world being one that is vegetarian, or something that Yahweh intended to be vegetarian. Whether all the plants in the world are good to eat or not is kind of beside the point.